We'll break down the games, the legends, the moments that define competition. And today I have my special guest, soon to be my co-host, no other than Mr. or Dr. Tommy Ree, a sports chiropractor, an author, and a pioneer in self-free regenerative medicine.
Hey,
Welcome,
Daniel.
welcome.
Looks like we have a good
Yes.
show coming up here, huh?
Definitely, people. Sports 101 is coming soon wherever you listen your podcast. But right now, we are live through all social medias, and please do support us. Every Wednesday, my partner, Dr. Tommy, will be my partner for now and. So, Dr. Tommy, can you please introduce more about yourself because this is our first episode?
Yeah, all right, Daniel. So I'm Dr. Tommy Reed, sports chiropractor, and I evolved with my life as a sports guy from the days of UCLA. And then, with those collegiate athletes, they go into the pro world. I go follow them along. And then now I'm in the professional level from the Olympians to the actual like NBA, NFL, all the sports here. And then I get to Tampa, Florida, and then I'm part of this WWE side of the wrestling world. Of course, these athletes are pretty aggressive in their trauma to their body. So I learned a lot through that process and finally got to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, became the team doctor there, been with them since 2015 to 2018. And through that process, it was about these tissue that needs to heal, and that's how I got involved with regenerative medicine, stem cell therapy, and now I'm in that realm of developing a topical stem cell cream and writing a book about it to explain all that stuff. So that's where I'm all involved in that world, and the basic backbone is sports. It's always been sports.
Indeed, sports is sports, people. And today let's talk about how athletes work out and recover. But before that, Dr. Tommy, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world and saying yes as my co-host.
Hey,
Thank you. Thank you.
all right, man. Hey, man. It's a pleasure. It's going to be a fun talk here. So I
Fan
guess the
talk, yes.
I guess the big talk is right. Workout and recovery. That's the big thing, right? So it's about
Mhm.
what you need to do as far as preparing for the game. And that starts off when you're a young adolescent. I mean, even go further than that. You're probably thinking about like when you first talk about sports or organized sports. And that can be like Pop Warner, Pee Wee football, all those things that you start off as a child. And then you get to that world of just playing and participating. And with that kind of level, you're not really working out as far as tuning into like aggressive type of workouts. But as you develop into that more extreme type of competition, when you get past that point of like 10, 11 years old, now you're starting to get more competitive. It's getting more fun. Now you want to outperform, outdo your competitors or your person that you're competing against, right? So then you
Yes.
start doing these extra workouts. You do start running more. Maybe if it's baseball, swinging the bat, throwing more in baseball. If it's football, learning how to hit, how to like get in the right position, getting those legs strong, your low back, and developing those type of muscles. So then you start working out. So these workouts, when you start thinking about it, it starts off with running. It's always about running. Running is a very key ingredient when you think about these workouts. So these athletes want to get that run, that cardiovascular, the ability to go through a workout or a game simulated workout and make sure that they can handle that with their leg strength. Then the next step is footwork. You have to do these foot drills. You think about these things you see on TV with the tire, you're jumping in and out of these tires, going on the path and making sure you hit the inside the tires, not the outside. And just doing agility, side to side movement, front to back, and just tuning that up and start speeding yourself up and just really advancing in that stuff. So that's what that workout's all about, at that age. You want to just develop that foot strength. You're not going to get a lot of muscle mass at that young age, at between, like 10 and 13, 14. You're not going through puberty. You don't have that hormones that really grab that muscle and build it up yet. So you're just trying to develop just footwork, knowledge of the sport, and just repetitive, that game spirit of just winning or even learning how to go through a loss. You're just trying to develop that game, that sportsmanship during that process. And then with
Mhm.
that, you just have to understand that you are going to get trauma in some sense of an injury or maybe an aggressive run. When we're young, we can recover real fast. So it's not a real point, but you have to understand and listen to your body, what's going. Then you go through that, from that what they call the growth spurt, right? You know how you have these people that all of a sudden they grow like 6 inches
Yes.
overnight or something like that, right? So now you have to contest to that. You're thinking about what is my body going through? I'm going through some hormonal change. That includes building muscle, bones are growing longer, and then you're going to have that growing pains. So then you're going to have to start thinking about that stuff. So then you go move on to that part. But Daniel, does that set the stage as far as like the beginning start of these athletes?
Yes, definitely. How they can do that, Mr. Dr.
Yeah.
Tommy.
Yeah. So now we continue on with these kids are going through this kind of growth spurt. The hormones are kicking in. They're starting to feel that muscle, that drive to excel more. And these kids, right? They're turning into like teenagers. Now they're starting to work out because you want to go into that muscle building phase. So when you hit that 12, 13, you want to start adapting into a regimen of weightlifting. Learn the mechanism of exercising, learn what it feels like to press, like doing a simple bench press, incline, military press, squats, and once you get those fundamentals down, then you start going into Olympic lift, how to do things off the ground, like simple, like there's a simple one that's like deadlift when you just pull the weight off the ground. Then you go into a thing called clean. Then you'll go into clean and jerk. Then you go into a thing called snatches. It's all about explosive with load. You're trying to get into that world. So now you're trying to get that explosive behavior in your body with load because that will increase the muscle mass. And then once you get those factors in there, now you're going into advancing as an athlete. You're developing, you're growing. There's things that are happening in your body that makes it more of a high school level because you're at 12, 13 and you want to continue on growing. So when you start going into that process, now you're building. So if you want to take one step backwards and understand about what we're trying to do as far as that building muscle during workouts, if it's a squats or a deadlift or maybe a sprint, you are trying to do better by growing these muscles. Now, how do we grow these muscles? Well, we have to break it down. We have to break it down with these exercises. It's like micro trauma. So when you break down the muscle tissue, now you need that component called recovery. The recovery helps you grow that tissue back. So you have to understand that you don't want to do a thing called overtraining when you're constantly breaking it down, breaking it down. You want to give that little bit of like rest, right? Another extra day of rest to get that tissue back to normal strength, normal ability, and maybe bigger and better. So now you go on to the next workout and you break it down. So you're slowly growing that muscle mass little by little, in addition to being more of a technical player, working on your position and developing that sense of competition. So as you start going in that world, it becomes more a challenge because now you're not just working out just to learn about it. Now you're working out for performance. It's about speed, agility, quickness, explosive, and once you understand that, then you have to look at the other side, which is the recovery. Just learn how the muscle can get to that side. So now you're at a point where, let's say you're at now 13, 14, and you're ready to go to high school level. Now the competition gets bigger. Now everybody is on that type of like regimen of working out. They may work out more, they may work out less, and that will depend on their ability and their mental state. So as you continue to work out, the workouts get longer, more aggressive because you want to break down that tissue. But again, think about the recovery. So you have to remember speed. Speed is about getting that muscle to change its fibers to go faster, bigger, stronger. And then once you break it down, recover. Now, when you recover, here it goes again. You're building it back up. You're breaking it down, you build it up. Break it down, build it up. You want that cycle. So let's take a track person. A track person, it's about a linear run. You can just go on. So depending on their distance, if it's 100 meters or if it's like let's say 800 meters, you train for that particular event. And there's moments in there that you're going to have to do excess of that distance or shorten it down, but you're more explosive. Well, again, the coach would handle that portion of it. So, again, once you go through that workout, recover. And recover is resting and nutrition and understanding how your body responds. So then I hope I'm doing okay here. Am I talking too much here?
Doing great, Dr. Tommy. But before that, I have a question. The 80 rule, doing most of your training is sub maximal intensity. Is that there counterintuitive to average person who thinks harder is better? How do you convince a young, ambitious athlete on holding back is actually the path to peak performance?
That's a tough one. You're absolutely right. Kids, especially competitive kids, you take them off the field because they are like maybe working out too much, overtraining. They will get to that point where it's like, what am I doing here? I don't want to stop. I want to keep going. And then the parent, knowingly that they're going through an overtraining scenario or maybe going down to a path where they're getting injured and it becomes a real bad problem, you've got to have that discussion with the athlete. You've got to, you've got to make sure that they have a knowledge. And then there's always a comparison, right? There's a lot of comparison when you look at like these pro athletes that are injured. You say, do you want to be like this person? No, no, I want to be like that. And then you set these micro goals. Okay. So if you're injured now, they may have to sit out that week. But then you say, all right, if we do the right things, go with the right therapist, our right medical staff, we can get back with that agreeable date, and that's what we're going to work towards too. So I think the big thing is that make them have a date they return to play that date, and then they can have a better like a outlook. Instead, they think some kids they go, oh my god, my life is gonna end. I'm not gonna make it. I can't play the sport. So I think the big thing is that giving them a date to say, all right, we'll go back at this date based on information from the medical people.
Interesting, Dr. Tommy. So you talk about periodization, the cycling of training phase. When you look at the athlete's season, how do you think about the relationship between the work they're doing in December and the result they need in August? What is a thread that connects them?
It's about where they're at in their workout or their off season workout. So your goal is to get to a particular like peaking season. That's a great example that you want to hear about is track. Track is that type of peaking season. So during the season, you don't want to peak at the very beginning of the season. You want to peak at the end where it counts. So think about how track goes. Track and field. They have these running events, and during the season, you compete here and there, but they're kind of building up these things called points or some type of like training sessions or just type of like competitive school to school. As you go further into the season, you start going into things of like regionals, or then you go through regions to qualify for state. Then when you compete against state, then you're trying to go to like your region of the country and eventually be the country and then the world stage. So these are the stages you want to understand, and then what the ultimate goal is. If you're looking for the Olympics, you don't want to peak in the middle of the season. You want to peak very at the end. So you have to think that this part of the season, wherever you're at, is part of the stepping stones. So I
Mm.
always look at like the beginning of the season is the start of the escalating of the actual loading of the body. The first part is techniques and getting used of the blocks, competition, the stands, and feeling the flow. And as you go further into it, the competition gets bigger. But then again, you're pushing yourself more. So it gets increasingly more and more. So again, big thing I always say is about dates. You've got to get a timeline and find out what you want to do and where are you in this timeline.
Very well said, with Dr. Tomei. So the concept of training until technique breaks, then stopping. How do you teach an athlete to recognize the difference between pushing through discomfort and pushing into compensation patterns that will get them injured?
Yeah. The younger you are, you're going to make a lot of mistakes. At the very beginning, you'll make those mistakes thinking that, oh, this is something I need to push through. And then we all start off the world in this realm of competition and want to stay in the field, want to play, want to just have fun. But as you get older and the competition gets more, intense, you're pushing yourself, and then you become that type of that chronic or some kind of injury, right? So then you have to sit back, and then you have to, as an adult, and you see your child going to this thing, you have to really like understand the mindset of that person. You want to not hinder that mindset, but you have to have them understand what is this all about overtraining and understanding what you're going through. It's tough. These kids don't have a reference point. You need a reference point. So it's like the first time they get injured, they'll understand it because that pain is their bio signal, right? They understand, oh my gosh, it hurts when I walk because of this hamstring issue. So that's your reference point. So the next time they get injured, you can say, hey, remember that time you got injured with your hamstring? Oh, yeah, I remember. Pain is a great memory tool, right? And so
Mm.
that will be the point. But, it's hard to start off with no injuries, no problems, and then have that first injury and try to have a conversation about, shutting it down or, understanding the injury and the time it takes to get back. So it's a difficult task at the very first start off.
Dr. Tommy, boredom is a real challenge in elite training. Endless hours of submaximal or submaximal work, repeating the same movements. How do you help athletes stay mentally engaged when the work itself is deliberately monotonous?
Yeah.
Hmm.
It's tough. That one is a tough one. There's drills and there's type of workouts. It's got to be repetitive. You're looking at technique. Technique is so important when you look at these little one blast, one max rep, one events. There are techniques that you have to look at per position per sport. But when you look at something like weightlifting, right, Olympic lifting, or track and field, or something that takes one explosive move and that's it, that's that one race, it's all technique. And you have to be repetitive. You have to perfect that mode. So I know coaches, what they do is they do a lot of mixtures, right? There's one day they'll do block works, meaning the starting. They'll work on start. Then maybe the next phase would be that transition from the start to, getting up and going, the transition zone. And then they'll work on technique on keeping it strong at maximum rate all the way through the race. And they'll work on that. Then they'll go back to the start. They'll mix it up. It's very difficult to understand the monotony behind training, and it takes discipline. It takes a lot of discipline. So you're right, people do get bored, but if you understand what the goal is, boredom is beside the point. You're looking at numbers. You're looking at, I want to improve by point 0.004, and that is the incentive. You want to get that time. So when they see that that's the actual goal, that repetitive motion, that sort of like that overusing of that particular training session, well, becomes a challenge now. Now you constantly want to do it because you want to get that time reduced. So I think that's a big thing, is that you have to incentivize and understand that particular event to understand that particular movement and then the repetitiveness of that.
Dr. Rami, moodiness, sleeplessness, and increased perceived effort during normal workouts, these are the often first indications of overtraining. How do you build enough trust with an athlete that they tell you, I'm struggling, before we have to see the data?
Wow. Look, I this is where it's easy and hard. When you have an athlete that's it's increasing his career, he's at the very beginning of his career. He's easy to talk to. He's easy to coach. He's coachable. Because when you talk to someone that's just new in this world, they're understanding about this type of competition, this level of competition, and how to get to that. He's like a sponge. He's taking all the information and absorbing it. He's never going to compete against you or question, because he doesn't know. He doesn't know the whole system of this thing. So that person is a perfect ideal athlete. The one that comes to challenge are the veteran or the one that's been seasoned. He's the one that thinks he knows everything. He doesn't know that there are other factors that may be affecting, because his judgment's been clouded. It's been a system of mental, fortitude, that no, I'm not injured. It's my mental state. I just need to get stronger mentally. They don't see from the outside looking in that no, you are physically ill or you're physically injured. You need to shut it down. So those are the hard ones. Now, what I do with those athletes that have been seasoned is that we do like I would say it's like almost like you do a sidetrack. You say, all right, let's do this. Let's do this type of workouts, and then understand that it's similar to the ones you're doing, but it may not be as much load, but it feels similar in this action. So you try to like deviate from that particular action that keeps on injuring him and move to another type of mechanism that simulates that but doesn't actually tax the tissue. And they agree to that. They do that, and then that gives a little bit of like relief on that tissue. That's a problem.
Dr. Tommy, you've mentioned that sometimes the hardest person to manage is the one who too dedicated, the athlete who will everything you ask and more until they break. How do you protect someone from their own work ethic?
Um, it's a curse and a blessing. If I had an athlete that was like mentally strong, can go,
Yes.
that's a perfect athlete, believe it or not. Now, the curse is that when they're injured, then they're still that person. They still think they compete. They still think they can go push hard. That's where the danger occurs. How do I deal with those kind of people? It takes a team. That one I can't do on my own. I mean, if you look at somebody on an Olympic level, when you look at that and that particular, I mean, you're talking about career, namesake, competition. These events don't stop because you're injured. They continue on. So that is the panic stage. What do? You have to think about the long-term goals. You have to get him to understand we're not concerned about this race. We're concerned about the peaking season, the very final Olympics, the World Championship. If he understands that, then it's better. It's tough. And then you have to talk to their support team. They may have a nutritionist, maybe there's a mental coach, there's maybe some parents or a wife or a husband. You get them involved. You need a team to kind of get them understanding the whole object of what you're trying to do, and then work together to talk to the athlete to say, listen, it's time to back down.
Yes, certainly, Dr. Tommy. So, when an athlete gets injured, the physical recovery is often straightforward. The mental recovery, the fear of re injury, the loss of identity, and frustration is much harder. How do you coach someone through that invisible rehab?
The mental side is huge. You can talk to every athlete in the professional, even collegiate level, it's mental. And once you get to that physical side of things, your body has the ability, just like everybody else, to do that particular event. If it's a strength component, agility, footwork, catching the ball, hitting the bat, we have the capability at that certain level. What turns on is the mental side, like you said. The mental side is very crucial. How do you do it? That is a game of what you are really relating to with that person. If you understand that athlete and you have a relationship, now you're doing something. You just have to have that type of relationship and then have a truthful conversation. The truth is will really set everything in its motion. But until you have that conversation, it's tough.
It's tough indeed. So, Dr. Tommy, can you please invite our listeners to support your advocacy, your business, or whatever projects that you're doing right now?
Yeah, again, my topical stem cell regen. Go on the website rheegen.com. Take a look at it. Know about the topical world of stem cell, and also I wrote a book. It's called "The Future of Regenerative Medicine." It's on Amazon, and take a look at it and explain everything about stem cells, what kind of stem cells, and the future of where the world's going to.
Yes, people, let's support Dr. Tommy Ray because if you support him, for sure, more and more empowering advocacy like this to rise. So, Dr. Tommy, I have finally one more question. Looking at the landscape of youth sports and fitness culture, there's a lot of glorification of grind and no days off. But if you could speak directly to a young athlete who believe that more is always better, what would you want them to understand about relationship between work and the rest of the culture is not telling them?
Work, that is a great mindset, and I applaud that athlete. Keep going. But you have to understand if you really want to get bigger, stronger, It's not about the workout more so, it's about the rest. It's how you develop during those rest periods to make the muscles bigger, stronger, and faster. That's where the growth is occurring.
Very well said, Dr. Tommy. And tune in next week, people. We have a better, bigger, bolder list that we will talk about with Mr. Tommy, my new co host on Sports 101. So, Dr. Tommy, thank you so much for your time.
Hey, no problem, Dan. It's fun.
Welcome, people. See you soon.